Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. We greet you this morning in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ. We welcome each and every one of you to the platform this morning for our Saturday session of our Winter Institute. Last night, we were blessed with inspirational message from our preacher, Pastor Jared Britton Washington from Hopewell AME Church in Hemingway, South Carolina. You're too faithful to be frustrated. And it was a mighty word on yesterday. On today, we have an action-packed day. On today, we won't keep you too long. We'll go right into our devotions led by our district chaplain, Brother Kenneth Woods, and then we will hear from our Director of Lay Activities, Dr. Felicia Commodore, who will lay out the day for us. Thank you and be blessed.
Good morning, Second District. I won't be before you very long this morning. I do want to say this. The preacher last night was touched on what I was going to talk about this morning. I prepared this on Thursday. So we're going to have a brief prayer, a short scripture, and then a summary. It won't take very long. Let us pray. Tina Turner sang a song a few years ago titled, "What's Love Got to Do with It?" Well, I tell you this morning, love has everything to do with it. The Bible says, "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." As we gather this morning, let us love everyone. God loved us so much that he sacrificed his son Jesus for us. Forgive. We must forgive. We must have forgiveness. Forgiveness goes hand in hand with love. How can we show love? We can show love with a smile. We can show love with a kind word or deed. We are all the children of God. How can we say we love God and not love our brothers and sisters? Gracious God, from love we are made, and to love we shall return. May our love for one another kindle flames of joy and hope. May the light and warmth of your grace inspire us to follow the ways of Jesus Christ and serve you in your kingdom, now and forever. Amen. Scripture will come from Matthew 12, verse 1 and 3, and verse 9 and 10. I'm coming from the African American Jubilee edition of the Bible. Dear friends, God is good. So I beg you to offer your bodies to him as a living sacrifice, pure and pleasing. That's the most sensible way to serve God. Don't be like the people of this world, but let God change the way you think. Then you will know how to do everything that is good and pleasing to him. I realize how kind God has been to me. So I tell each of you not to think you are better than you really are. Use good sense and measure yourself by the amount of faith that God has given you. Verse 8 and 9. Be sincere in your love for others. Hate everything that is evil and hold tight to everything that is good. Love each other as brothers and sisters and other honors more than you do yourself. I'm going to summarize that up. And I got inspiration from our 23-25 study guide. Jesus commands us in his word to love one another, even our enemies and those who despitefully use us. This means we must love everyone without taking into consideration their race, color, creed, excuse me, and even the choices they make that we say we would never make. Love is shown not in how, but what we speak, but in what we do. Love is an action word, which means it is seen in how we treat others. Can we love everybody in our own strength? Absolutely not. We need some divine intervention to show love to those who mistreat us and say unkind and untrue things about us. Jesus tells us that we can do all things through him who gives us strength. Always follows Jesus' lead. realizing that his ways are not our ways. Admonish us to submit ourselves, therefore, to God. Then that mind which is in Christ will also be in us. That is transformation. We must think the mind of Christ. We can love with the heart of Christ. Thank you, President Matthew. I turn the service back over to you. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Brother Woods, for that wonderful devotion this morning and helping us get our spirits and minds where we need it to be, so that we can receive all that God would have prepared for us today. Um, um, so we're going to get started today. As I mentioned last night, for those that were there, we will be having 3 sessions today. One will be an opening plenary. Then we will take a break. We'll then have our first learning lab, which we will then have a break after that. And then another learning lab, and then we'll have some reflections, remarks, and we will wrap up. So we well, don't plan to be here for a long time, but a good time. All right. So that being said, we're bringing to the platform now someone who is not a stranger to many of us in the lay, and I consider him a good friend of our district, Mr. Jerry Turner, who is the 4th Episcopal District Lay Organization president. He is also our new chair of the Connectional Lay Economic Development Corporation, which we know mostly as the CLEDC. And Brother Jerry Turner has taken this charge, and he has challenged us to begin to rethink and reimagine what the CLEDC can be and do, and what we can accomplish through the CLEDC in its new season. And so he's come with us today to share that vision, and to be in community with us. And I'm looking forward to what he will have to share with us. And so, no further ado, I present to you Brother Jerry Turner, and I will let him come to us with what he has at this time.
Good morning. Good morning, Second Episcopal District, certainly to your presiding bishop, Bishop James Levert Davis, your presiding prelate and supervisor, Aurelius Davis, your Episcopal District Lay Organization president and brother, Mr. Matthew Douglas, certainly to your most capable director of lay activities, Dr. Felicia Commodore, and to all of the officers of the Second Episcopal District. It is a joy, it is a pleasure to be here with you under my hat as the chair of the CLEDC. We do have a couple of updates, and certainly, do you have the slides queued up? We're going to go through this. It's the same presentation that we did in December at the Connectional Lay Executive Board meeting, but we do have some updates. If there are any questions, Madam Director, Mr. President, did you want them to go into the chat or hands raised? What is your, how did you
Yes,
want
sir.
that?
We're sorry about that. If you have a question for Mr. Turner, please put those in the chat and we'll wait until he finishes his presentation. No question is too small to ask because we want to make sure that we're well informed, and he's doing a great job. So please put your questions in the chat, and once he finishes his presentation, we'll raise those questions. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I also want to recognize my Director of Lay Activities, the 4th District, who's on the line, and of course the former chair, another brother beloved, Derek Anderson, the person that got us to this particular point, and of course your president, of the lay organization, who also served as president of the CLEDC. So without any further ado, these are the updates for the CLEDC. You see on the slide, we have the officers of the CLEDC. Certainly, we recognize Dr. Edna Watson as the elected secretary, and of course, your own Mrs. Wanda Sims, who is also serving as the parliamentarian for this reimagined CLEDC. Next slide, please. Those are some names of persons that we know that were leaders in CLEDC, and we are strong in unity and love, a foundation to keep the legacy alive for the future. Next slide. The entire membership of CLEDC did meet in December. We have some historical information that is there. And of course, Mr. President, after this presentation, you can send this out to everyone. That will be fine. We had 103 people registered, about 70 persons attended, and the first report was well received. We have approximately 221 members of CLEDC as of from the biennial convention of 2019. We are using that as our core group until we are able to come up with something new and reopen up the membership process. You see the board of directors to the other side of persons who are representing the various Episcopal districts, Episcopal district presidents, and those connectional officers. We do have ex-official members, Dr. Marcus Henderson, Mrs. Adrienne Morris, Mrs. Wanda Sims, and of course, Dr. Derek Anderson, our immediate past chair of the board. Next slide. This is just a summary progress at the June 23 38th Biennial Convention. The delegates authorized the certain reorganization and redevelopment of the CLEDC. That deadline will be by biennial 2025. I'm happy to say at this particular point, we are moving ahead schedule. We will probably have something ready by the fall of this year. The current funds of CLEDC will forward it to the CFO, Dr. Marcus Henderson, for safekeeping in the AME Finance Department. Next slide, please. In September of 2023, Dr. Anderson submitted his resignation as the chairman of the board. Yours truly, who became the president of CLEDC, was appointed by president of the Connection Lay Organization, Abe McKeedy, as the new chair of the board. We did send an initial email to the CLEDC membership, informing them of the change and making sure that our confirmation is correct with Dr. Henderson, that they are holding the funds for the CLEDC. We certainly thank Dr. Anderson, Sister Hopewell from the 1st District, who served as treasurer, and Brother Douglas for their leadership in this. Next slide. As you see, there are a couple of recommendations that was approved by the CLEDC board: recasting of a new vision, name, and purpose of a foundation, allow for the timeline to be used with the necessary adjustments, and I'm sharing some pieces of that timeline with you at this particular point. Allowing the chair along with the finance team to discuss this with the CFO to place the remaining funds in an interest-bearing account investments. $2,500 of the funds will be placed in a checking account for operational expenses over the next 2 years. There was an initial membership letter that was forwarded to the membership. We are reviewing the Constitution and bylaws for any adjustments that will probably happen as we change the CLEDC. Consider moving in the direction of a foundation versus an economic development fund. And finally, allowing the chair to coordinate the administration of reimagining CLEDC. Next slide. At our October 23rd meeting, the nomination committee presented a slate of officers. We do have Dr. Edna Watson from the 2nd District as the recording secretary, and Mrs. Glenda Minor from the 8th Episcopal District as the treasurer. The nomination committee will continue to seek board members to fill vacant positions. So we currently have a president, a recording secretary, a treasurer. We do have a financial secretary that was appointed and a parliamentarian that was appointed. Next slide. I just want to give you the numbers of the CLEDC total membership by district. We thank certainly the 2nd Episcopal District for your membership of 37 persons that paid in 2019 as members of the CLEDC. And as a side note, what we have done in order for our international districts to have input in this process, we will send general CLEDC meeting communications to the Episcopal lay presidents from districts 14 through 20. We have also included 2 representatives from districts 14 through 20 to be a part of the VPN committee that I will talk about in a few moments. Next slide, please. Moving ahead, timeline of 2024, subject to change, and there are going to be some changes made quite soon. Next slide. The development of the Vision, Purpose, and Name Committee. The role of the committee, because before we can really work and deal with how this is going to look like, we need to have a vision, we need to have a purpose, and we need to have a name. The role of this committee is to do the following. Propose development of a new organization or foundation to work in collaboration with the CLO as a separate organization. In these processes, and many of you are members of sororities and fraternities and other organizations, most organizations have some type of an outreach that's separate from the main organization. It can be a foundation, excuse me, or any other organization that will work towards helping to be a part of the community or the world at large. The separate foundation typically will be able to go out and receive grants and things of that nature. But there must be a firewall between the said organization and the foundation. So in our next steps, we'll be working towards how that will look. The committee will receive briefing information on the current vision and purpose of historical information as a point of reference for this work. We'll be using the professional services of Dr. Patricia Hicks as our chief facilitator. I want to thank Dr. Anderson for offering Dr. Pat Hicks. She actually runs a firm helping organizations to redevelop themselves, recalibrate themselves, and she has done well with us and will be working with us as we continue to reimagine CLEDC. The committee comprises of several board members, general members of CLEDC, representation of Episcopal districts 14 through 20, young adults, and experts in the development and coordination of this type of an organization. Next slide, please. January 2024, and they have done this month. The VPN committee, as we're calling it, convenes. They have convened already. They've had 2 sessions on the 6th of January, and they also had a session on last Saturday. I am happy to say that I have seen the first report from that committee, and it looks very good. It looks like it's going to be something that is exciting, and we are anticipating on their final report to happen in February of 2024. The VPN committee, the consultant, Dr. Hicks, will present its findings to the CLEDC board for input and approval for recommendation to the CLEDC membership. So early February, the board will meet. They will see the presentation as given by Dr. Hicks. The board will make their recommendations, any modifications, things of that nature. And once that is completed, she will go back, make the necessary updates, and it is our intention by early March of 2024, the full CLEDC membership will be convened and will be meeting and will hear the same presentation, and they will have an opportunity to vote if we can move forward with a proposed vision, purpose, and name of what this organization will look like. So in a couple of weeks, probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks, an email will be going out to the 221 members we have of CLEDC with the date and the time of when we will have a full CLEDC meeting. And the purpose of that meeting will be to approve a vision, name, and a vision, purpose, and name. Next slide. We will meet after the committee, after the full CLED makes their determination. We will send a courtesy report to the CLO executive board. Their meeting has been moved, so we will update that information, but we will send a courtesy report to the CLO, not necessarily for their approval, but for their knowledge, the official knowledge from the CLEDC and how we're going to move ahead. However, the planning committees will be formed and will be released to start working, getting those other pieces together. And we have some of the names of the committees there: bylaws, membership development, communication, marketing, legal, articles of incorporation, budget and finance, and compliance and audit. The first committee that will probably be enacted to work would be the legal, articles of incorporation. They will be the ones that will get the legal terminology in place, see what we already have, see if we can make some changes with that, or we have to start something anew. Once they complete their work, then the other committees will be enacted. Next slide. As they're doing their work, we are intending to have our annual CLEDC annual meeting. We are looking at it being a hybrid virtual meeting. You will hear from the officers, and then any committee reporting that may be ready for that time. That will happen of June of 2024. Anticipating it will be right before, probably the weekend before the general board. We will have our meeting. Then the committees will continue to work through the summer. In October of 2024, we are anticipating the bylaws to be completed. So we will have another full CLEDC meeting probably in October to ratify the bylaws. And then in November or December of 2024, we will again give a courtesy report to the CLO executive board of our findings and what we have come up with. And then biennial of 2025, we will have the reveal event, annual meeting, and our membership drive. It is our intent. I have already, we'll be sending a formal communication to President McKeedy along with to Director Wright and those members of the team for the 2025 Biennial Convention to do two things. Number one, give us some time to have our annual meeting. And number two, to allow CLEDC to have some type of event or breakfast as a fundraiser and to start the membership drive process of whatever the new organization certainly will be. Next slide. We thank you, and we are open for any questions that you may have.
Well, let me thank you, President Turner, Mr. Chair, for coming to us, and we thank you for all the work that you have done thus far with your committee and the CLEDC board members. Are there any questions for President, Mr. Chair, at this time? Any questions? Again, no question is too small, so please. All right. Well, I guess there's no question. I guess the one thing I would ask you is understanding what you're doing, the work that you're doing with the CLEDC as board members and the current membership, outside of those members that you said for each Episcopal district, what can we as an Episcopal district do to support the work that's going on now, and knowing that we're not giving to the organization, we're only hearing updates, and knowing that 2025 is a little ways ahead of us. So what can we do to support this effort now?
One of the things that we are going to ask for, some of the development committees, we will have members of CLEDC, of course, on those committees. We may pull persons from throughout the connectional church to serve. So I may, ask for some people from your district to serve on particular committees. And if they're willing to serve, certainly be able to serve. I'm hoping that the membership drive, I can pull it up a little bit more into earlier in 2025, so we can have a number of members in place by the time we get to the annual meeting. But it is our intent to, number one, make sure that the Episcopal districts will be members. So that process, I think, will still continue. If there are local organizations, can still be members. We are looking at those bylaws because I know in some districts, they have their own bylaws for an Episcopal district, CLEDC. At this particular point, once we talk to legal and talk to Constitution and bylaws, we may not have that type of a format. We're definitely looking at that. And another thing, and I know this is a hot topic button item, is governance, is making sure that the finances are in place and that we have a good accountability piece and transparency when it comes to finances. I read the original intent of CLEDC and some of the policies and procedures. They were in place. The people weren't doing it. Some of the people were not doing it. So again, and as I've stated in several meetings before, everybody's not taking. You have more people that are committed to the work and have done the work in the past. So we will be safer in this situation, and we're going to look at those things in this situation. So I have people that are very much qualified in finances to make sure that we will be safe in this. And if this situation would ever happen again, and I don't intend for it to ever happen again, we will have those steps in place necessary to make sure that the organization will be saved. And actually, with this firewall that we had in this last situation, if we would have not had the firewall, the CLO would have been drugged into this situation. So it was good that we had the firewall. It was horrible what allegedly happened, but it's good that we had that firewall between both organizations.
We do have a question. Brother Philip White asks, can you explain the difference between the foundation and the development corporation that we have now?
The original, and thank you, sir, for that question. The original intent of the development corporation, and as most of you know, during probably the late 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, a lot of churches had this economic development fund, economic corporation, building something, senior citizens housing with HUD and things of that nature, buying properties. So the CLO at that time wanted to do something in that regards. And I think the main piece was to get $1 million and build something, a hotel, a convention center, something that the church could have meetings and not have to incur those costs at convention centers and things of that nature. And it would be a sense of revenue for us. It was a novel idea. I think we were certainly well on our way with that. But in discussions, we found that the foundation side would be probably better, lining up for what we're doing, since the main intent of the CLO is teaching and training in the development of its members. So we found that the foundation side would be a better fit. We could receive grants from other foundations, governmental grants, and things of that nature. So that's why we went towards the foundation side.
Are there any other questions at this time? Please raise them in the chat. Mr. Chair, I have one more question. You talked about the you talked about governance of, the finances. What is your board's process for record retention so that we don't, like you said, fall back in the situations that we have in the past, so that if we have to, we can call up the history of these steps that we're taking?
One of the things in the former secretary, Sister Kimbrough, did a very good job in getting as much information as she could get. It's actually on a jump drive. So what I am doing now, and if Sister Watson is on the line, she'll be getting a package from me in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to have that jump drive, just simple as that jump drive copy sent to the secretary. We are going to, and I'm going to talk to Dr. Henderson and ask him to keep some space in the Washington office to have all of that documentation. It'll probably be in a binder or two that would be there, and keep it in several spots. So if anything would happen to me or the secretary or anyone, we could have those items retained. Also looking at a cloud system to make sure that some of those documents are in the cloud. So authorized persons can pull whatever information down, so we can make sure that we have that information. So it's a work in progress, and hopefully by this fall we will have something in place, and it'll be something that we will continuously update.
All right. Any other questions?
I have a question, Brother Turner. This is Felicia.
Yes, ma'am.
So just generally speaking, if I'm going back to my local lay organization and talking about this with one of my local lay members, Could you share why you think like your everyday local lay member should be interested in being a member or supporting the CLEDC in this new reimagining?
Um, what I can say, and I'm going to share something with you all. Just a moment. Let me pull something up quickly. Um, I'm going to give you the primary action. You didn't hear this, but I'm going to give it to you. Empowering communities to achieve and improve quality of life. That's one of the pieces that we're looking at. The organization will empower its communities by serving, supporting, promoting, and educating. So it's going to be very lofty. So what I would say to your members of your local lay organization is that we are developing something that would not be, we do a lot of giving, pay up, and nothing goes back down. So this is going to be more of effect. Yes, we're going to need some financial resources. Yes, we're going to need some of your expertise and your knowledge, but the giving back, it will be reciprocal back in forth. And I think that's where the trust will begin to take place in our local lay organizations or persons who are considering to be members of CLEDC. We are going to update our marketing pieces. As you may be familiar with the TED Talks, having some of those conversations, some of those videos that you can share with your local lay members that may encourage them to become members of the CLEDC, and making sure that our communications are very strong. So those certainly are pieces, and it's coming. It's going to take us a moment. It's certainly coming, but you can certainly tell them it's not going to be all you pay up and you don't see anything come back. And I think that's what a lot of people are expecting.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Sister Penny asked the question, is this something we can use in recruitment of lay members?
Yeah, I think certainly we can. We can use that recruiting lay members, recruiting members at large. This is something that can be that can help in your membership retention in recruitment, to say, we have the lay organization, it's teaching and training. We also have a foundation which is separate from the lay organization that will do the same kinds of things, but it may be something different. I can tell you one of the things that came out of some of the discussions, as we know what's going on in Florida and some of our other states with not wanting to deal with slavery, pulling books out, pulling out Black history, not wanting it to be a part of the educational system. We talked about freedom schools. And those of you that are educators are familiar with that. Maybe those are being some of our pieces that we give seed money to churches or lay organizations that may want to do freedom schools. Not give a whole lot of money, but at least something to get you started, get you the resources for that. So those are one of many things that this foundation could be a part of doing. It's going to take us some time because we need to build up the financial resources. But yes, definitely a good recruitment campaign.
Dr. Commodore?
Right, thank you. Well, thank you, President Turner. We really appreciate you coming and sharing with us. We appreciate you taking on the task of being our new fearless leader for the CLEDC and all that you're doing to reimagine and bring life back to this mission and this ministry. And so we thank you for your time on today.
Thank you so very much. I hope to see you all at Sunday school tomorrow morning.
We're gonna pray for the people. Second Episcopal District, we are running a little early on schedule. So what we're gonna do, I wanna acknowledge some of our special guests, and then we will go ahead and go straight into Dr. Anderson's presentation, and then we'll take a break after that. We have a few guests here. We're glad that they're in community with us today. One, as you know, is Brother Michael Cousin, who is the Fourth Episcopal District Lay Organization Director, Lay Activities, and he'll be coming to greet us a little later with his presentation. But we also have two, I believe, conference presidents here with us. Shakia Hampton, who's no stranger, she's a friend of the district, and also Brian Gray, who is the president of the Chicago Conference Lay Organization in the Fourth Episcopal District. So, we have three conference presidents from the Fourth. I just got, So we also have Sister Barbara Williams from the Michigan Conference Lay Organization and Deanna Woodruff from the Indiana Conference Lay Organization. So the Fourth District was in the house today. So I would just ask to President Brian, President Deanna, President Barbara, and President Shakia, if you would just take a few seconds to greet the Second Episcopal District Lay Organization and share with us today. We'll start with President Barbara Williams, if she's on. Okay, I don't think she says. President Deanna Woodruff, are you there?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning.
Greetings from the Fourth District and the Indiana Conference. We are just excited to be here. When we got the information, I just couldn't wait to come and take part, just to fellowship and learn more with our brothers and sisters across the connection. So just thankful to be here and hope to enjoy a wonderful day. Thanks so much for inviting us.
Thank you. And President Brian Gray. He must have stepped away. President Shakia Hampton, who's president of the Central Conference of the Seventh Episcopal District Lay. President Shakia.
Hey, good morning. How are you all doing? Welcome to my second district family. It is indeed an honor to be a part of your Winter Institute. Enjoyed the service on last night. And again, I feel like no stranger, and I'm so happy to be a part of this training. Thank you all so much.
So again, thank you so much. It's always great to have out-of-district guests with us, remind us of one of the special elements of African Methodism and that is our connectivity. And so we really appreciate you joining with us today. I'm getting a message that President Barbara is trying to unmute. Can we make sure that she is unmuted? Heck team. That's Barbara Williams.
You should be able to unmute.
Okay.
I sent a request to ask her to.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Well, what we'll do, Sister Barbara, will our next break, we'll make sure to, if you're still here, we'll give you a chance to greet us. So with that being said, we want to move straight into our first learning lab. Again, another friend to the district, Dr. Derek Anderson, who is no stranger to the lay organization. We've seen him many times, and we also know him to be a member of our judicial council, but what many may not know is that he is also the treasurer of the Ohio South Ohio Conference Lay Organization. And so he is joining us today, and he is going to talk to us about trusteeship and kind of the foundational understanding of what it means to be a trustee in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. As we know, there have been a lot of conversation of the role and responsibilities of trustees, accountability in our churches, how do we protect our assets and things of that nature. And there's even some upcoming legislation, I believe, regarding some of the responsibilities of trustees. And so we found this to be a very timely presentation. And we know there are many of you who serve as trustees in your churches as well. Many of you may be aspiring to serving as trustees. And so we are looking forward to what he has to share with us today and the training that he will be providing us, and so we can learn a little bit more and be a little more apt about what it means to be a trustee in this church. And so with that, I bring to the platform Dr. Derek Anderson, and we look forward to what you have to share. Thank you.
Well, good morning, members of the Second Episcopal District. Let me say first to your president, Matthew Douglas, and to the mighty Dr. Felicia Commodore. I am certainly privileged to be with you this morning. I must say that the very partial to the Second Episcopal District. I call it my second home, and also it is my second favorite district. So I'm after the Third Episcopal District, of course, my home. Certainly to your bishop and supervisor, Bishop Davis and Supervisor Davis, and to the leadership, the entire leadership team of the Second Episcopal District, and to my colleague, who may or may not be on the line, I'm not sure, Judge Star Battle, who serves so excellently on the Judicial Council with us at this time. I am going to talk a little bit probably about information you already know, maybe some refresher for those of you that may not know, and then also give some really groundwork and some things that we are seeing and have experienced in the global church about just how important and significant the work and ministry of being a trustee is. And I would say that it's more than just a position or role or title. It is truly a ministry, and we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. President Douglas, I sent you the presentation. Do I? Oh, there it comes. All right. So we'll go on to the next slide, or do I have control? Okay. So what is a trustee? You probably think, there we go. It is an individual or person or a member of a board given control or powers of administration of property in trust with a legal obligation to administer it solely for the purpose specified. So trustees, you are that group of people who have the property in trust with an obligation to administer it for the purpose specified. So the property could be a church. The property could be a rental home. The property, whatever property your given church owns, as trustees, you have the administrative right and administrative responsibility and legal obligation to care for it and to care for it well. We'll go to the next slide. So what does the discipline say? Trustees must be what? Elected. Not selected or appointed, they must be elected. And that's important because a lot of churches sometimes will the pastor will get up and say these words. I wonder if, I wish I could see a show of hands, but I'll leave that to your own discretion. But the pastor will stand up and say, all right, it's time to appoint stewards and elect trustees. But for this conference year, I'd like to leave all the trustees the same as they were last year. Are you all in agreement? And the church sometimes will say, yes, we are, and they'll just move right on. Is that an election? Have people been elected? No. Trustees must be elected, and that election must be by a ballot. Let's go to the, you can keep hitting. I think there's a couple things that'll pop up on that screen. There we go. Trustees must be at least 18 years of age. And why is that? Because trustees must be full members of the church. And of course, that turns at the age of 18. The persons nominated must have been members of the local church for at least 6 months and a member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church for less than 2 years. That means if I were to pack up and move to the 2nd Episcopal District and join Reed Temple AME Church, when I get there, the pastor can't say Derek Anderson is now going to be a trustee. Even though I may have been a member of the AME Church for 40 years, I'm missing a critical requirement because I have to be a member of my local church for at least 6 months. Now, that does not happen. That's exempted in the case of a mission or a new work. So if you go to a church that just started, that exemption is going to be granted, and that exclusionary work does not have to happen. Let's go to the next slide. Continuing on. All right, so the pastor shall appoint a time and place for the trustee election. The pastor must give notice from the pulpit at least 10 days, including 2 consecutive Sundays previous to the time of the election. We can't come to church on a first Sunday in February and the pastor say, we're gonna have trustee election today or trustee election next Sunday. It must be announced at least 2 consecutive Sundays prior to the election. And the pastor must nominate twice the number of trustees desired for that congregation. There is no set limit on whether your church should have 12 trustees or 13 trustees, but they can have no fewer than, who can put in the chat, no fewer than how many trustees? I don't know if it's, that's right. Thank you, Brother Michael Cousins and Sister Warren. No fewer than 3 and no more than 19. That's exactly right. So no fewer than 3, no more than 19. Now, again, one year the church may have 7. The next year, the church may want only 5. There is no prescribed lifetime number of trustees needed for a given congregation. That decision, of course, is vested in the pastor to make those nominations and to do so well. One of the things that I can share with you that we see and hear about across the church sometimes is the pastor will nominate, if you're going to nominate, let's say we're going to have 5 trustees. The pastor nominates 10 people. The first 5 are the kind of 5 people that we know and have probably traditionally served as trustees. And then the next 5 people on the ballot are the people on the sick and shut-in list. Only that's trying to drive the church to do an election the way they want them to do it. But we'll talk about that at another time. Every member of the church 18 years or over can vote. Every member of the church 18 or over can vote, but they must be present at the time and place of the trustee election. There's no proxy voting, no absentee voting. You have to be present at the time and place of that election. Next slide. Continuing on what the discipline says. Now, this is critical. All trustees must be trained within 60 days of their election or prior to their appropriate quarterly conference. Why do we say prior to their appropriate quarterly conference? Do we know why? They have to be trained before the appropriate quarterly conference because at the quarterly conference, when the presiding elder comes and to confirm the stewards, the trustees of the church are amenable to the quarterly conference. So in order for them to be then members of that quarterly conference, they have to have already gone through this process of the required training that is spelled out in the discipline. They must attend 3 training sessions, one on their disciplinary duties, one on accountability, and one on their additional duties. And a certificate of confirmation shall be given to each one of those trustees. Now, I don't want to ask in this, don't put it in the chat box, but for those of you that were just elected trustees, did you go through a series of 3 training sessions before you were brought to the quarterly conference and listed as a trustee? If not, all right, let's go to the next slide. Now, who's in charge of the trustee board? Who is in charge? We should know that the pastor is the chairperson of the trustee board. The pastor's signature is required to make acts of the trustee board legal. And if the chairperson, the pastor, cannot be present at a meeting, there can be appointed a chairperson pro tem, or as we call him, the pro tem of the trustee board. Now, it's important to note that while we do, for consistency's sake, keep the same person typically in local churches, for instance, Felicia Commodore may be listed, we may say that she is the pro tem of the trustee board. That does not mean she holds that position for life. That means that when the chair, the pastor, cannot be at the meeting, Sister Felicia he's requested, or she has requested, that Sister Felicia serve as the chair. But because it is not a designated position, if we're in the church and I'm the pastor and Sister Felicia, I've said on the first Sunday in February, Sister Felicia is the chairperson pro tem for the meeting you're having on Friday. But in May, I say, oh, but now Michael Cousins will be the chairperson pro tem for that meeting. That means that the duties and responsibilities that Sister Commodore had before have now been transferred to a new person. The chairperson pro tem is not a full-time position. It can switch between people on the trustee board as often as the chair requests it to be. However, I want to put a little star there. For consistency purposes, it is always good that there be a consistent person serving in that role. Let's go to the next. Who are trustees accountable to? Trustees are members of the quarterly conference and are answerable to that body for their official conduct. They are to make a report of all receipts and expenditures during the quarter to the quarterly conference. And trustees shall not prevent or attempt to prevent the bishop or ministers of the AME Church from preaching, expounding God's words, or serving as a pastor. Now, I know that last part you're probably saying, well, of course we know that, but I want to tell you a real story. In a church, the trustees did not like the fact that they got a certain person as a pastor, and they decided to lock up the doors to the church and change the locks. Hence, preventing the bishop or minister from preaching in that church. That is an illegal act of the trustee board and cannot happen. So trustees that are on the line, please don't get any ideas of trying to block the pastor because you got mad or the church is mad at the bishop and you decide to lock the church down and say, nobody's going to worship in here. At that point, you are acting illegally and you are not holding up your end of the bargain as an elected trustee. Let's move right on. So what do trustees do? Trustees manage all temporal concerns of the church. They shall have a treasurer elected by the board. They shall guard for the connection. They shall guard for the connection, not the local church, not the annual conference, not the Episcopal district, but for the connection, all real estate, churches, parsonage, schools, and any other property obtained by the local church. That means if your church owns an apartment complex and it's in the name of the church, the deed is held in the name of the church, that church belongs. I'm sorry? Dr. Douglas, is that me?
No, continue, sir.
Oh, okay. That means that all that property belongs to the connection, and it should be noted as properly on the deeds of the property.
Derek, can you unmute? You were accidentally muted.
Thank you so much. I apologize. Trustees shall make improvements upon the property or real estate when authorized to do so by the members of the church, and they shall secure by purchase or hire a house. That's old discipline language there, by purchase or hire a house for the pastor's family and comfortably furnish it. However, in lieu of this agreement, the pastor may be given a housing allowance. That is happening more and more, and amazingly or interestingly, it's listed as part of the responsibility and duty of the trustees, but who negotiates that? Who do we know would negotiate that housing allowance? Trustees have to ensure that it's carried out, but the negotiation of a housing allowance is subject to there you go, look at y'all. I see it in the chat. That is subject to the Board of Stewards because they are in charge of negotiating the compensation package for a given pastor. Let's move right along. Yeah. Trustees provide the moving expenses of the pastor and family from their previous assignment. We oftentimes forget this critical piece of information. It is the receiving church's responsibility to get the pastor from their former church to their now new church. We often think it's the sending church ought to send them to us and we'll take them once we get there, but no, we are to welcome them from their old assignment to their new assignment and provide for the moving expenses to do so. Trustees shall not sell church property without the permission of the quarterly conference by resolution and then by the annual conference board of trustees. All right. Well, we got a scenario. We're going to talk about that again. That's important. You cannot sell the property, church property, without the permission of the quarterly conference by resolution and then by the annual conference board of trustees. I would also add a caveat in there. It needs to have come from the conference, the church conference would have informed the church, the trustees in how to carry that process out. So it would start at the church conference. They would authorize the trustees to move forward. They would take the resolution to the quarterly conference of which they are a member, and they bring that resolution to the quarterly conference, and then from there on to the annual conference board of trustees so that they can move forward. They shall not prevent or attempt to prevent the use of the property for religious services. We talked a little bit about that just a few seconds ago. Moving right along. All right. Trustees not only maintain the property, but they are obligated to enhance it. That means if the church is running down, or we know that we need new carpet and folks are tripping on the carpet, the trustees are obligated to enhance that or fix that. Trustees also ensure that the church has the right equipment to make it efficient. Trustees inventory the church and all of its property. Trustees ought to know how many hymn books we have, how many Bibles we have, how many chairs and tables we have. There should be a complete inventory in the church. Trustees ensure that the church property has adequate insurance. If there is a loss due to the undervaluation of insurance, trustees can be held liable for it. That's very important. If there is a loss to your church property due to the undervaluation of the insurance that you set on your church, the trustees can be held liable for the difference between the value and what the real value is. Trustees must keep the premises safe and immediately remedy situations creating harm and causing liability. You see that? Trustees must keep the premises safe and immediately remedy situations creating harm or causing liability. So if you have an upstairs, downstairs church and you know that that handrail needs to be replaced, trustees, it is our responsibility to ensure that that is fixed and fixed with speed. All right, let's move right on. Let's go to some scenarios. Here's a scenario. You know AME Church has a parsonage that the new pastor does not want to live in. The officers have decided to sell the property. They have a buyer who approaches the church and wants to do an all-cash as-is purchase of the parsonage, but they want to do it in 5 days. Can the trustees and the church make this immediate sale? Michael Cousins says no. Sister Warren says no. All right, we see all the no's, and the answer would be they can make that sale if they can get the process done in the 5 days. We know for in reality, because we place reality in this scenario, it probably cannot be done in those 5 days. Why? Because there must be a church conference authorizing the sale. Then there must be a quarterly conference. And from the quarterly conference, the conference trustees have to meet and give that approval. It is highly unlikely that that can be done in those 5 days. Therefore, this would be a no. If they can get it, maybe, but highly unlikely. Let's move to the next scenario. Uptown AME Church has been having financial issues. They realize that a way they can cut expenses is to change the church property insurance. To do so, all they need to do is change the valuation of the coverage of the church to change the valuation to a new amount. Unfortunately, once they do that, once they change the valuation, they decrease the valuation of the church. Unfortunately, a pipe bursts and floods the church. The church learns that to do what the trustees did, and now there's not enough coverage to repair the church. Who is liable for this? Who is liable? That's right. The trustees would become liable because through an action of their own, they decreased the value of their insurance. Now they've had an accident. They were trying to save some money, and now they're going to have to be charged some money. And that valuation difference was solely on the work of the trustees, and now they can be held liable for this. So trustees, first thing I would do tomorrow when I go to church, I would say, Pastor, we need to have a conversation. What is the insurance valuation on our church? Because we need to make sure that we have enough coverage to protect us if anything goes wrong. And in today, as a matter of fact, I would encourage everyone who is an officer of a church, a local church, with the way things are costing now, with the cost of just simple things escalating, and especially with supply chain issues, it is important to ensure that you have the right insurances in place, that your policies are up to date, that your registrations are up to date, that your licensing within your state or commonwealth is up to date, because you want to ensure, the trustees need to ensure that all of the necessary legalized paperwork, for instance, in the state of Ohio, churches must be registered with the Secretary of State and have a certificate of good standing. Most of the churches, we file it and then trustee board changes, pastor changes, no one pays any attention to it. and then something goes wrong. And we have the right insurance. We have all of our other documents in place. And then the insurance company says, I need your certificate of good standing in your state. And guess what? If you don't have that, it can cause your insurance payment to be in jeopardy, your insurance payout. And I know that Brother White just put in the chat box that I saw, Church Mutual is dropping churches. He's 100% correct. Insurance companies are dropping churches because churches have become very relaxed in the method in which we use to ensure our documentation is in order, that we have the proper insurance coverages on all of our churches and our church properties. We think, hey, we're the church. Everybody knows we're a church. We got to have it. No. Ensure that you have all of those documents in place. And if I were you, especially if there's any trustee pro tems on the line, or even just really concerned trustees, all of us, I would make sure that we know the official place where all of our documents are. And then, because in this world of scanning things and keeping things electronically, when you introduce new trustees and bring new trustees on, you should have a zip drive or a thumb drive that has all of the critical documents in one place, and find out who the person is that's going to keep that, probably the secretary of the trustee board, so that we know we've got our records in one place in a secure location. Let's go to our last scenario. All right. Mega AME Church has finally gone back to in-person worship. In the return, they notice that they seem to be missing some tables and chairs from the fellowship hall. They notice on Facebook that a few members have some of the chairs and tables at their home. What should the trustees do? What should the trustees do? That's right, Sister Dr. Commodore. Someone had a big cookout, they had a family reunion, and they came to the church. They were like, we need to get some chairs. So they came in, they got some chairs and some tables, and they took them to their home. Now, when they come back, when the trustees are there, how do the trustees know that some of the chairs are missing? The trustees should know, because if they've done their annual inventory, they should know that when we start, there you go, when we started the year, or when we ended last conference year, we had 56 chairs. I'm just using that as a round number. We had 56 chairs. Today, when we counted, we have 46 chairs. Somebody has some chairs. So stewards and trustees, that's why it's important to keep an inventory. Most of our churches, and this could have also been an example, most of our churches, due to the COVID-19, we took hymnals and Bibles out of the pew. There are some churches today that can't remember where they put the hymnals and the Bibles when they took them out of the pews before COVID started. Now that we're back, we need to have the same number of Bibles and the same number of hymn books that we had before we went out. That is accomplished through an inventory that needs to happen. And then those trustees, to following through on this scenario, trustees, you get those tables and chairs back, not by embarrassing a member, not by putting an announcement in the bulletin, not by having the pastor announce it in the pulpit, or having some big fellowship meeting where you berate Sister Wilson for taking the tables and the chairs back to her house. A trustee, pro tem, or the trustee that's done the inventory or who's in charge of inventories, pull Sister Wanda aside, have a conversation, and then and then ask her to return the tables and the chairs. No harm, no foul. I encourage you, when you do that inventory, and if something like this were to happen, and I use this as an example because I have seen this in real life, what you do is you don't embarrass a member. You don't use this type of opportunity to berate somebody. You just go to them, you get your property back, you move on. Okay? So I think that was the last scenario. And so I'll ask if there are any questions. Any questions you could put? Sister, I'm sorry, go ahead, Brother Matthew. I'm sorry.
No, there was one, Brother Frederick Wallace asked the question, because of scenarios like this, couldn't a case be made for the trustees to be bonded?
There is an opportunity for trustees to be bonded, and the only thing is finding the right bonding amount that will take care of the coverage of your church. Bonding has various levels of capacity. There are some people that are bonded, and you have to have a criminal conviction of them for something wrong. So that's not the type of insurance you want for this. This is more of probably a surety bond that would make it confined to a dollar amount, that if there's a loss of such, then the trustees are covered by a policy like that. But yes, bonding is a capability. You have to make sure that it fits your local church situation.
All right, we'll go to Brother Michael Cousins, and then there's 2 more questions in the chat. Brother Cousins.
Okay.
Thank you, President Douglas. Excellent presentation, Judge Anderson.
Thank you, Dr. Cousins.
Thank you. 2 things. One, Judge Star Battle did a similar presentation for me dealing with this subject matter. There was a comment made, and it was made by a clergy person in regards to trustees, the responsibilities, and our book of law, book of discipline, and how the discipline is simply a book of suggestions. Can you please explain the danger in that remark alone, in regards to our law, the book of discipline, and the trustees' responsibilities? And then 2, many of our churches have 501c3s. And so there's been a lot of talk about this, especially within my conference and my district, about how the relationship of the 501c3 and that of the annual conference and the annual conference trustees. So are you able to respond to those 2?
All right, let's take the first one. That the clergy person made in your conference. There is no suggestion in the book of discipline. Let me take that back. The only time that the discipline gives a suggestion is when it talks about local church organization. It says you can do it this way, where you have the stewards and trustees, and then it also talks about the commission form. The Commission on Worship and I think it's, the Commission on Worship, the Commission on Music, and so forth. That's the real only time that there's a suggestion level in the book of discipline. However, the book of discipline is the law. That is the law. The judicial branch of our church only uses the book of discipline to make a decision or to enforce a decision. So I want to tell everybody, Dr. Cousins, I'm sure my colleague, Judge Battle, probably said the book of discipline is not a book of suggestions. It is the law of the land. On your second part, in reference to 501c3s, you're 100% correct. 501c3s in our local churches and Episcopal districts are very large. But what happens is there should have been, when the attorney or legal representative set up that 501c3, they should have taken our in trust language or put a provision around indemnification that talks about the cyclical relationship between the actual church and the given 501c3. The 2 should never be in conflict with one another. If that language is in the 501c3 articles of incorporation and in the 501c3 filing, then there should not be any conflict between the 2, but they should really kind of tie in. There's a clear separation between the 2 entities. However, nothing that the 501c3 does should cause a negative impact on the church. And so while the 501c3 is not amenable to the annual conference, they're not amenable to the Episcopal district or even amenable to the church, one thing we should not have is a 501c3 that does something in contradiction to what the church is doing. Does that answer
Awesome.
that, Brother Cousins?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
No, thank you, sir.
All right, We have 4 more questions, and then we will let you go. The first question is from Mr. Charles Summers. How often must there be an election for trustees? How are trustees replaced upon death, resignation, or illness?
Trustees are elected annually. They should be elected right at the start of the conference year, so just after your annual conference, at a time and place designated by the pastor. When there is a trustee a spot that becomes open by death and or resignation, and the church conference wishes to fill the responsibility. Remember, there can be 3 to 19. So just because one person dies doesn't mean we automatically have to have a new person. But should the church feel to do so, there must be an election announced. The election process goes just as it did for the original group of trustees.
All right, thank you, sir. The next question is, should trustees do monthly or annual inventories?
I would say that's dependent upon the local situation, but an annual inventory would accomplish what I think you would need in your traditional standard. Just like
All
at
right,
work
brother.
or even in a store, it's that annual.
Brother John Todd asked, what can the AME Church do when it's discovered that trustees are not being elected not elected, but selected?
Well, the local church needs to raise that at the quarterly conference. Thank God it doesn't come to the judicial council. It goes to the quarterly conference, and that's where that question is to be raised, and the presiding elder needs to handle that accordingly.
All right. Sister Robin Gallery Todd asked the question, how do you handle a situation when trustees don't know their job and the pastor doesn't encourage them to learn or to get training?
Then the lay people in that church need to say, listen, our second Episcopal District president had a training on this, and here's the video you might need to watch. But no,
all right.
in reality, it happens all the time. It happens more widely than not, because one thing about it, an uninformed congregation allows certain people to run rampant. What you got to do is, if you know that what's right and the right thing to do, and you have a group of people like a board of trustees who is not doing that, then you need to ensure that you share, as lay people, one of our chief missions. We are the teaching and training arm of the church. If we realize that, then hold a session at your local church. Do a training at your local church, or talk about a training in your annual conference. Because if we don't help our brothers and sisters who don't know, then we're just as guilty as those who prey on our people for not knowing.
Our director of technology asked the question, with the introduction of virtual platforms and social media, does the bounds of temporal affairs only relate to physical property of the church?
So repeat that question again.
It says, with the introduction of virtual platforms and social media, does the bounds of temporal affairs only relate to the physical property of the church?
Well, we certainly wouldn't say that we hold in trust the virtual world in relation to the church. I'd have to get a little more specific on what the deal, the deep dive is in regards to that from the virtual standpoint. Certainly the virtual equipment that is within the church to do it certainly is the onus of the trustee board. Yes, the platform that you use in terms of the equipment or the wiring that you use, the cameras and so forth for virtual reality is a portion of that the trustees would have a responsibility. And I would even stretch it a little bit more, that the contracts that are associated with Zoom or your virtual platform companies, those contracts need to be held with the trustees, because that is something that the trustees also should have a responsibility and know something about as well.
All right.
I saw Brother Cousins come on. I don't know whether he had a question or not. His camera came on. I don't know if that was to get our attention.
No, I guess he was just testing his camera. We'll ask our director of lay activities to come back to the platform at this time. Thank you, Judge Anderson, for your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, members of the 2nd District. I look forward to seeing you at the General Conference. I think I now know, President Douglas, where your section is, where your district is sitting, but I have to find the paper.
How you know that and we don't know that?
Yeah, I'll tell you later.
All right, Dr. Commodore.
Thank you, Judge Anderson, for this presentation. As we see, there's many folks in the comments saying how helpful this was and how informative it was. And so we are grateful for your sharing of knowledge with us. As was mentioned in the chat, we do plan to make the presentations available on the SEDLO website, and so we'll be letting you know when they will be available. But thank you again for your presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so 2 things are going to happen very quickly. We're going to head into a small break, a quick break, about 15 or 10 minutes, 10-minute break. And so before that, though, I wanted to have our amazing, invaluable tech person, Sister Shanae Saunders, talk about, she has a little game that she plans to play with. So I'm going to let her talk about that before we go into our break.
Hi, everyone. Okay, sorry. Hi, everyone. So we will be, and actually, let me spotlight myself. Okay. Hi, everyone. So we'll be playing an emoji Bible character game. So as you're taking your break, feel free to, in the chat, just put the answers to the questions. You'll see different emojis. It's going to suggest that there's a Bible character or characters, and just put it in the chat who you think it is. But if you need to come and go, feel free to do so. And this is just giving you something to do during this 10-minute break.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was like, thank you so much, Shanae. And I know from many trainings before that you all are very competitive. So
they are.
Everybody let's keep Christ in mind as we play. And also, please do not play if you have to go take a bio break. Please take your bio break and then come back. The emojis will still be there, I promise you. But thank you for that. I also just want to acknowledge, I saw in the chat, the Canadian Conference President, Elvira Douglas, is also here from the 4th Episcopal District. So I wanted to thank you for being with us today. Okay, so it is 10:28. We're going to take a 10-minute break. That means we will get started at 10:38. And so, handle all your needs. And if you're going to stay around, we're going to play a little game. Thank you. Director of Lay Activities, and I can say, as one of his colleagues, I have learned so much from him, and have had the opportunity to share in some of the wonderful trainings and programs that he has coordinated and facilitated in the 4th Episcopal District, and he is a doula extraordinaire. And so we are excited that he'll be sharing to us today, and he'll be talking to us about how we should approach and proceed and execute hybrid meetings in our churches and for our lay organizations. As we know, we have had some shifts and changes in how we do things due to the impact of the COVID pandemic. And so we're rethinking and reimagining what it means to meet and convene as a lay organization. And so Brother Michael Cousin will be sharing with us one of the innovative ways we can do that, but make sure that we still do that with excellence. And so with that, I would like to bring to the platform Brother Michael Cousins, and he will come to us with his information. Thank you.
Good morning, Second Episcopal District. Thank you to my sister director and my sister in life. I love her dearly, Director Felicia Commodore, and I am pleased to say that I am just so excited to have her relocating to the 4th Episcopal District later on this year. She is definitely just a gem, and I'm pleased to say I've known her for almost 15 years now, and I've learned so much from her going along life. But to everyone here, good morning. Pleased to say I am here reporting from the 2nd Episcopal District. I am in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. 2nd Episcopal District is my second home, specifically the Western North Carolina Conference. Shout out to Barbara Myers, Penny Oliver. My father is the pastor of St. Paul Chapel Hill, and so I am here with him and my brother. Shanae, do you have my presentation? I know I just sent it a few minutes ago. Very good. All right, so we can go to the next slide. Bishop and Supervisor Davis, to my brother Matthew Douglas, to your young adult representative, Brother Johnston here in the West, to our connectional leaders, of course. We know Bishop Wicker is our chairperson, President McKeedy, Director Wright, Young Adult Representative Williams, and to your connectional officers, Sister Watson and Brother Ayers. God bless you, and thank you so much for your leadership. And go ahead to the next slide. You can go to the next slide. There we go. All right, so you all are a unique district like mine, where you have a number of retired leaders, and being a grandson of retired Episcopal leaders, I thought it not robbery to recognize yours that are here in the 2nd Episcopal District, specifically to the Bryants who served for 8 years in the 4th, to Supervisor Bird, Supervisor Henning Parks, both here in the West, and to Supervisor Rowena Webster White in the Washington Conference. God bless you all, and thank you so much for your leadership. Next slide. We are the fabulous 4th Episcopal District. Again, thank you so much for all of your support and for attending our 38th biennial session in Chicago. We are still tired from it. Bishop White and Supervisor White, President Turner, and Young Adult Representative Sanford, and myself, on behalf of the 4th Episcopal District, thank you so much. And I bring you greetings on behalf of our Episcopal District leaders. We are the 4th Episcopal District. We are the upper Midwestern United States. We are Eastern Canada. We are the nation of India. Next slide. All right, so we're learning about a hybrid meeting. So this is really a topic that a lot of us as AMEs, a lot of us as Black folks, we'd like to ignore. And COVID has forced us into this era of virtual meeting space, hybrid meeting space, but it is a bitter pill that eventually all of us are going to have to swallow. Why is that? Because we know COVID has forced a lot of people to stay home. COVID has forced churches, organizations, their ministries to really do business differently. And we cannot revert back to our archaic methods of meeting and meeting planning. And I speak of those that existed before the COVID pandemic. And Zoom, although it is new to us, surprisingly, it is not new. And there's a few of us that may be on this platform now who understand what I'm talking about when I say Google, I can't think, Google Meets, Microsoft Teams, and Zoom, that existed before COVID. That didn't just happen overnight, just because we were forced indoors. And so, my brothers and sisters, we have to understand the danger, and sometimes when we say, if we all need to just come back together, and if you ain't in the room, you just gonna miss the message. Well, Jesus wants us to reach the masses, those of every birth. And so in reaching the masses, we know that there's going to be some people who just miss the feeling of fellowship with one another. And so, and I'm one of those people where I want to be in the space and be face to face with the individual, with the person who is preaching and or the person who is doing the teaching. Wherever I need to be, right there. But there's also those who are unable to be there physically, and those who just have other commitments. And again, Saturdays are a perfect example where I am stretched often between 2 or 3 meetings at the same time. So I can't be the only one. If you are one who's stretched between 2 or 3 meetings and are able to make it happen, raise your hand. And I thank God for Zoom, because I'm able to stay active on certain levels within ministries. Oh, come on, I can't be the only one now. I can't be the only one. Somebody raise your hand, because I know. There we go, Fee. Thank you. There we go, Brian. All right, D, thank you. Where we are stretched, and thankfully, because of Zoom, because of the way we are able to catch the vision of a virtual meeting and hybrid meeting, we're able to make it happen. I want to give a quick shout out to our 4 conference presidents that are on the line, and to our connectional president who has just joined us. So hybrid meeting involves, again, a mixture of in-person and remote attendees. Being remote, we're all remote because we are here virtually, and in-person attendees, we sit together in a dedicated meeting room, and sometimes each participant will take part in the meeting using a personal device, whether they're in the room or not. Next slide. So advantages of a hybrid meeting, and these are just some: it improves efficiency and engagement. Again, we as a 4th Episcopal District have tripled our attendance for our executive board meetings and trainings. We have not only reached younger generations, we have reached our senior saints who have been unable, financially or physically unable, to join us at our district meetings wherever we are, whether it be in Detroit or Chicago or outside of St. Louis. We are bringing the meetings and the trainings to them. And again, it allows also for more flexibility. Again, Saturdays for me are a perfect example, and specifically with those who are on double or triple duty. So we know a number of laypersons who are faithful laypersons, but are also faithful to the Women's Missionary Society. So we know a number of people who are in Little Rock, which I just left last night. They're unable to be here right now this morning because they're in a prayer breakfast. But guess what? If they weren't in that prayer breakfast and they had a meeting with the WMS, they can have this lay meeting on their laptop and the WMS meeting on their phone. We're able to share and rewatch the meetings. So again, we're able to rewatch the meetings because Zoom allows us to record these, and we're able to share these recordings via email or put them on the website or any form of social media. It enables cost-effective collaboration. So again, cost-effective and not free, because it is not free to run a Zoom platform, specifically if you want the meeting to last for longer than an hour, and if you want your Zoom to have more than 100 participants. It allows for inclusion. Our last meeting that we had that was hybrid, it was in October, and we were in Indianapolis. And Dr. Carlos Perkins, the pastor of Bethel Cathedral in Indianapolis, he hosted some individuals from the Indianapolis area. But also on that Friday and Saturday, it allowed for those who were unable to be there in person to listen and to share while they were driving home from work, while they were running errands. So again, we have to make sure that we are being inclusive of all people and considering the plans that they may have already had. Design and plan meetings with intention. So because our virtual space, it allows us, of course, we don't have to pay for lodging for an individual or transportation for them or whatever. But there are some meetings, guess what? We do bring the presenters to us wherever we are hosting or streaming that meeting. And we also consider now that we have cost-effective collaboration, we can bring in the experts on the certain subject matter that we wish to discuss for that particular event. And it allows us to select the right technology. So again, Zoom, we are comfortable with connectionally, but I know for work, I work for Delta Airlines, our preferred technology or platform is Microsoft Teams. So again, it's all about what you're comfortable with and which technology, which platform or source is able to help you to accomplish your goal of a meeting. Next slide, please. All right, so assembling a dream team. You have to get a dream team in order to make that dream happen, for that vision to come to fruition. So your event planner in the lay organization, the principal one at least, is the director of lay activities, in working with the president and the young adult representative. And you meet and create a team of intergenerational and tech savvy individuals. So that does not mean everyone has to be young. It will be to your advantage that some of them be of the younger generations. And you are essentially preparing those younger individuals for leadership. But you are also, again, bridging the gap between those generations, and those tech savvy individuals are learning some of the older ways of doing business and kind of merging that into the hybrid meetings that we see come to fruition in the 4th Episcopal District. So just for the size meetings we have, we're going to say this is a small scale meeting. So again, 3 to 6 months prior. If you're talking about a biennial convention or even a WMS quadrennial executive board meeting, you want to start the sooner the better. So that's going to be at least 2 years for those kinds of meetings. But for these purposes of the district level, 6 months prior to the meeting is when we start to first meet as a dream team. Maintain clear and concise communication. So you're doing that via email, text messages, and you are meeting often. You're asking questions, actively listening, then responding. You're not passively listening or just listening just to get your 2 cents in. You meet regularly as needed, and you create and execute that plan. And so when you're first starting out, again, the larger the scale, the further out from the meeting that you need to start with your dream team. All right now. We meet monthly, weekly, or more frequently as the event draws near. You gather the necessary tools needed for success. So again, your AV equipment, your laptops, and other in-person materials. So we know for hotels, the hotels usually contract AV equipment, and I know from co-chairing the 2021 Biennial Logistics Committee, that's going to eat up a large part of your budget. So if you are dealing with a district lay meeting or some kind of smaller function, I would suggest dealing with a hotel or an event space where you don't have to use their contracted AV company, but you can bring in your projector, bring in your laptop, bring in whatever other tools you need to make that meeting happen. And if you're meeting at your bishop's meeting, so for example, at your midwinter meeting or your planning meeting, whatever they're called, meet with the POC for that meeting. So in the 2nd district, probably Janet Benjamin or whoever on that staff, and kind of get an understanding of what is needed to make your meeting a success. And if AV is already contracted in that meeting as a whole, see if you can get in on that. And hopefully you won't have to be separately contracted to use that AV equipment, but it's all about having that clear and concise channel of communication. And you delegate and assign your tasks. So you have your host, your co-host, your moderators, and points of contact. So for this meeting, I see that we have more than one co-host, which is good. You usually have the one host who creates and starts the meeting for the Zoom. You have the co-hosts that are virtually letting people in. I have one that is addressing questions and comments in the chat. And there's also a moderator virtually. And I have a moderator and a POC that is there in person, handling everything. The last hybrid meeting that I remember, and it was a little larger scale than the October meeting we had in Indiana. We were in East St. Louis, Illinois, and I'm sitting down front and I have the laptop in front of me and I'm able to see and hear certain things, but I'm not able to hear or see everything because I need to know exactly what's going on in front of me. And so I had someone in the back who was monitoring everything for me and looking at it with it through a different lens, and was able to communicate with me via text or walking up to me and letting me know whether we missed something or we need to adjust something so that our virtual audience can have a clear, concise communication channel that they registered and paid for. Next slide, please. So get that dream team together. So your plan. Your plan is about having a vision and a purpose, and that plan should essentially be in line with the purpose of the lay organization. And your vision should include, again, reaching the masses and reaching out to those who you have not seen or are unable to join you in the past. And you establish and approve a budget. So again, this having a hybrid meeting is definitely going to require a budget. So working from a director of lay activities, I'm already in communication with President Turner, already in communication with Young Adult Representative Sanford. We are communicating and working out a plan with our Budget and Finance Committee chairperson, as well as our treasurer and financial secretary, so that we can present and approve a budget that is essentially a part of our overall annual budget. So again, nothing is being hidden. We believe in transparency, and we know ahead of time exactly what is required. But for the sake of fiscal responsibility and again, transparency, for that meeting, we have a convention budget. And you want to make sure you market the meeting. So again, working with the dream team, as well as your director of public relations. Our PR director is Edwin Harris. He does an awesome job. I send him text messages and emails, and he creates the flyer and graphics, and we send it out to everyone. And we have in our database as a 4th Episcopal District, hundreds of people. So if you've registered for one of our events in the 4th District, we have your email address on file, meaning that you are a part of our database. We want you to buy into our vision and buy into our ministry that we are so blessed to share with the Connectional Church. And we've been doing so for the past almost 4 years now. Next slide. All right, so in your plan and to help you create the budget, you should know how many people are registered. And again, directors of lay activities specifically, work with your registration committee and gather regular reports so that you are prepared to know exactly what is needed for your event. Again, what are your operating costs for this meeting? That should be included in that budget. Again, maintaining that communication with the finance team and maintaining communication with the finance team. This does not mean that the finance team dictates the training or the overall programming of the organization. Ultimately, your president and the executive board approves whatever needs to happen within the organization. So I want to make that clear that the finance team they ain't running nothing. The finance team is letting you know that, yes, we have the funds. No, we don't have the funds. But everyone needs to be on the same page. And ultimately, that decision that's going to be approved by that executive board and the president. And you follow the approved meeting budget. Zoom, whatever platform you use, is definitely not free. And we need to consider that when we are creating our registration or whatever needed for our event. Next slide. So have you gathered your resources? So let's make this hybrid meeting happen. Who has purchased the Zoom or the Teams account? And we're going to assume that the district already has it or the conference already has a Zoom account. Who's bringing the laptops or the computer equipment? Who's bringing the projector and screen? Or we can assume that all of us are financially strapped. You may be able to afford the AV contract with that venue. Is that included in that contract? The registration materials, what are you giving to those virtually and those who are in person? Will it be the same thing or will it vary? And since the virtual participants may be getting less than those who are in person, doesn't mean that the registration may vary for in-person versus virtual. And in the AV contract, the contract with the venue, do you have a strong Wi-Fi internet connection, or does someone have or also have a hotspot? And do you have enough volunteers? So again, the more volunteers, the better. In terms of a hybrid meeting, again, you definitely need those in person and those who are going to assist you in the virtual space. And everyone needs to be on the same space. No one should be doing the same thing. So make sure you're having regular volunteer conversations and meetings. Next slide. So again, gather and distribute your information. President Dolan, young adult representative, collect that necessary information. You respect and adhere to deadlines. So in the 4th district, we're getting a lot better with the deadlines. And when you are openly communicating the need to respect deadlines, especially when you're dealing with hotel contracts, then you would definitely get more people buying into that, and they will respect the deadlines. And it gives the director of lay activities specifically the information that they need, that we need. How many registration materials do we need? Our presenters, are they going to have enough copies, if they're going to have copies of their presentations or whatever else they need, and distribute your meeting information in advance and registration kits in advance. So the first 1 or 2 meetings we had virtually, I can say that we registered folks and then we sent out the Zoom information. It was about three weeks in advance. It's not going to happen again. Why? Because we have a lot of senior saints, and not picking on senior saints, but also some younger individuals who can't dig that far back into their inboxes. So what we have adopted as a process is sending the Zoom information and the virtual kits the week of, and it's usually 2 or 3 days prior to our event, so that it's fresh in your inbox, and it gives you time. You don't have to go so far back in there to look for it versus 3 weeks. So we get the registered individuals, we cut off registration at about a week or 2, depending on whether it's a board meeting or a convention. And then we do what we need to do and send it out the week of. That's what we do in the 4th. Next slide. So again, DOLAs is all about working your script, create an engaging agenda or a script. We want to, again, make sure that we're aligning with the objectives and the purpose of the CLO. But once you look at and study the objectives, you find that you're able to kind of step outside of the CLO box, and kind of engage a new audience, which is needed to carry our organization and our church into many years to come and keep our African Methodism going. Stick to the script. Once you have created it, don't deviate, and produce runs of show rehearsals prior to the meeting. So bring everyone together on Zoom, go through that agenda, go through the whole program, have the meeting before the meeting so that there's no surprises, and you can anticipate for a hiccup or 2, and you know exactly how to and when to correct it when the event occurs. Next slide. And so directors of lay activities, it's our job, but it's everyone's job to make sure that we are doing what we are supposed to do as a lay organization, and that we are engaging in educational and training programs. But DOLAs, it's our job to plan and design and direct those trainings. And so these are the duties and responsibilities that of the connectional director of lay activities. But on all levels, we're not limited to just training and planning. We are not just the chief trainer, we're the event planner. We are the protocol officer, we're the usher, we are the lay day speaker, we are all of that. And all of that comes under our umbrella. But this is in consultation with the president and approval of the executive board. So again, ensuring that everyone is on the same page and on the same wavelength, is consistent and concise. Next slide. All right. And then this talks about the DOLAs, how the proposed theme and program. So whatever you plan, what I do at the district level. So let's talk about what's done at the connectional level and how that translates to the subordinates. The connectional director of lay activities presents the theme for the next 4 years and the program that will be presented at the meeting immediately following the biennial. So how did that happen? So when Pat Wright was elected at biennial in Orlando, she had time to get whatever she needed to get together And then when we met at that fall executive board meeting was when the training plan was presented for approval. That's where we got the new theme that we are using until 2025. So what that means is, of course, we're using the connectional lay organization theme at the district level, and maybe a sub-theme that coincides with that. But that's presented in the overall plan of training at the first executive board after our annual convention. So again, no one is being left in the dark. We want to make sure that we are staying above board and that we are following the process in order to implement what we need to implement from the connectional level. Next slide. And again, and highlighted, part of our job is preparing an annual and biennial line item budget to reflect the work of the office for submission to the budget committee. So again, it is submitted to the budget committee, and it is the budget committee is assessing whether it's feasible and presenting that to the executive board, because the executive board is who approves in the interim of the biennial whether that's feasible or not. I present again what I think I'm going to need to the president and the young adult representative. Then we go to the budget committee, and then everyone, once we're on the same page, we go to the executive board. So are you having the meetings before the meetings? And when it's time to have the event, are you meeting with your group, with your dream team, to make sure that the dream is indeed happening? So as a district director of lay activities, besides the president, the YAR, and select individuals, our finance team, I also work with the conference directors of lay activities, and they know everything that I'm doing. We have a WhatsApp group, we text, we email, and I include them on a lot of what I do as the district director of lay activities. And they're aware of what to expect, what's coming down the pipeline in terms of a budget for this office. Next slide. There we go. So are you ready for showtime? So the on-site POC is staying in constant communication with the virtual POC. They are glued to their phones, they're glued to laptops, tablets, whatever they need to communicate. Have you confirmed that your registrants have received all materials? Do you have everything printed right there for pickup for your in-person registrants? Have you possibly mailed? Do you have mail-in registration kits for those who are participating virtually? Does everyone have what they need to be successful for that event? Have you set up the meeting room and tested the equipment the night before? And we've seen time and time again where there may be a hiccup or two, but that does not mean that the setup and the test did not happen the night before. Stuff happens, and if it happens, then you got to roll with the punches, and you have to have a contingency plan. What's the backup, just in case the AV fails? What is the backup if you don't have enough seats or tables for everyone there, and you have more people that are registered because maybe you have on-site registration? What is your backup plan? And then when it's time, the day of, have you retested the equipment? Have you regurgitated, oh, Jesus, I can't even talk. Have you recommunicated tasks with team members, with your hosts, with your moderators, with your room assistants, tech team? Have you overly communicated that? Have you worked with the evaluation committee to create a survey to collect the data and feedbacks? Again, it's all about delegating tasks. You can't do everything. And are you ready for that debrief to occur after the curtains come to a close? And that's where you really evaluate what can be done differently. So once you have most of these checked off, you should be ready for your showtime for your hybrid meeting. Next slide. And most of all, pray, relax, and have fun. I'm guilty of sometimes being a little uptight when it comes to things going right and not controlling my facial expressions. And my mom, who's on the line, she'll have to text me or she'll call me or whatever, pull me to the side and say, fix your face, relax, calm down. Once you have prayed about it, everything else is going to fall into place and you will in turn have fun. Again, we want this to be a fun and engaging environment. We don't want to bore people to tears. We want them to come back and bring a friend and bring another friend and bring someone else. We want to have more people than the last event that we had. So it's important that, again, pray, relax, and you have fun through the process and through it all. Next slide. And at this time, I will entertain any questions if there are any. Again, I'd like to thank you all for allowing me this time to present this. I hope that this has been helpful to some, especially to our directors of lay activities. Again, as a district director, I have a soft spot for all directors of lay activities on all levels. We go through so much. We have a lot that we have to do, but we definitely have to make sure that we are doing business differently, specifically within our lay organization. So again, if there's any questions, comments.
Thank you, Brother Cousins, for that wonderful presentation. I saw the hand of Brother Bill Ayers, and we do have a question in the chat. But Brother Ayers, did you have a question for Dola Cousins?
Sorry about that. Great presentation. Thank you. We learned a lot. But as you can see, I put my hand down. I had trouble putting it down. So, but just wanted to let him know that he did a great job, and we gathered great information in terms of planning.
Thank you, Brother Ayers.
All right. We have a question from Brother Philip White, and it says, would you use RAYAC in this process? Brother White, if you want to come off, do you want to clarify that a little bit more?
Yeah.
Or is it clear to you, Brother Michael?
I'm going to interpret that as, do I use them in the planning process?
That's correct. In other words, yeah, we just reactivated that age group at our church. And I didn't hear you mention it or anything. I know you talked about your YAR in your planning process, but would you also use REACT in your part of your dream team?
Absolutely. So yes, we would definitely use RAYAC and those young adults within that age range and bring them on board. Absolutely.
So Dola Cousins, I got two questions for you, which we often in our dream team wrestle with, and it's around like when to charge registration and when not to charge registration. Because if we don't, we, like you said, we always are incurring certain costs. So what is your rationale when you encourage a registration cost and when you don't incur costs?
Well, what's the need of the organization? So what state are you all in at that moment? I'm blessed to say in the 4th district, we are not exactly hurting for anything. So for our trainings, specifically for our executive board and leadership training sessions, we do not charge a registration. We will lift up an offering, free will offering, if those who are able to give, they will give. And then we will also put up a giving slide. We didn't do that until recently, but because others were buying into the vision, they were asking us how they can contribute to our lay organization. So when we do not charge a registration, we'll still have opportunities for people to sow an offering. But for our conventions, that's usually when we will charge a registration. If there's a need for the executive board meetings to have a registration fee, we'll keep it low. So like $20 or $25.
Okay. Well, thank you, brother Dola Cousins, for this wonderful presentation. As you said, you are a member of the Second Episcopal District by virtue of circumstances, so we claim you as ours as well. Your Fourth Episcopal District family is registering there. How proud they are of you in the chat. So thank you for this presentation. Again, this will go on our website along with, oh, even your brother is on the chat today.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I want to give him a shout out to the leader of the Western North Carolina Conference, lay delegation to this year's General Conference. I am just peacock proud of Timothy Charles' cousin, who's a member of St. Paul Chapel Hill.
We will go to our DOLA, Dr. Commodore, and then we will introduce our connectional president to the platform. Director Commodore.
Thank you. Thank you, brother, because I did have one question that I wanted to ask. And that is, in our district, we have a number of churches who are in rural areas that may have broadband issues or Wi-Fi issues, but still feel like there's a need to do hybrid meetings, maybe for folks who can't get out to meetings. Do you have any suggestions for churches in that situation where maybe there needs to be phone options or different things of that nature?
So the good thing about Zoom is that they automatically have that. So we'll use Zoom, and then we'll also include the telephone number options. And, you know, to my surprise, there are people, there's a couple people in the city of Detroit who have connectivity issues, and so they'll use the phone number too. So whatever platform you're using, I would suggest having the telephone numbers for access for them as well. But I'm thinking right now, because we have a number of rural churches in rural areas, specifically in Illinois and Indiana conferences. They don't have that problem, but again, when we send out the invitation, are you including not just the Zoom meeting link, but also those telephone numbers as options for people to call in?
Thank you. Thank you very much. So again, great presentation. As I mentioned earlier, Brother Cousin is one of our most knowledgeable doulas, I believe, across the connection at the Episcopal District level, and many of us look to him for support and for advice. And so I'm really glad that he was able to share that with us today. I'm going to bring President Matthew Douglas back up so that he can introduce our special guests who are here.
My brothers and my sisters, thank you again for staying with us. We've had a consistent capacity crowd for the majority of the morning. It is indeed a pleasure and an honor to introduce the current global president of the Connectional Lay Organization. And I'm gonna try to pronounce his full name, and he can correct me when he gets on the platform. Matakin Abendigo Makiti is our global president. He is the first president that has been elected from the continent of Africa. And this really brings together what it means to be a connection. Since he assumed the role after the untimely death of Sister Valerie Bell, he has worked not just to continue the work of the lay organization, but also to bring us closer and to refocus us to do the great things that the lay organization was designed to do. So it is a pleasure at this time to bring President Makiti to the platform as he greets the Second Episcopal District Lay Organization at this time. President Makiti, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, President Douglas. It is a pleasure to be here. And thanks to the DOLA, your DOLA, who's also doing such a wonderful job. I was just looking at the menu that you're having in front of us, and I thought, you know what, I must join the Second Episcopal District. Good things are happening there. Dr. Commodore, for the work that you are doing as a donor, we thank you. I wanted to listen to President Turner this morning, but unfortunately I couldn't. I was actually driving from one place to the other. And it is always a pleasure to be here in the Second Episcopal District. And the work that you are doing, President Douglas, we really appreciate it. All the time, when you put up something like this, you will know that it's a good thing. And particularly that you have your donor, Dr. Commodore. We also like to thank the leadership of the Second Episcopal District. Leadership is not only us here, President Douglas. You and I don't have constituency, man. People that have got constituency are the local presidents down there. Those guys have got people with them. They just forwarding them to us. We thank you for the work that you are doing for the Second Episcopal District, and we also like to thank the district of the annual conferences as well as the conference presidents for the work that they are doing. I cannot forget to mention the leadership of the church, the spiritual leadership of the church, the pastors, our pastors that are getting us together. Thank you very much for this. President Douglas, I would like to be here, but I need to move on to another district. But your menu is so good that if I can get a chance of coming back, I will. I definitely will. Thank you, Second Episcopal District. May the good Lord enlarge your territory leadership. God bless.
Thank you, President Makiti, and we will make sure that you get the video along with all of the presentations that were offered on today. So thank you for your time, and I know you have to jump to the 13th Episcopal District for their district meeting that they are having. I will bring back to the platform our wonderful Director of Lay Activities, Dr. Felicia Commodore, to give her closing remarks, and then I will come back to the platform. Dr. Commodore?
Thank you. So didn't we have a time today with all of the information shared? I did want to take a moment because we learned so much today, and take a moment for us to reflect on what we learned today and really think about all the information that was shared with us. So I have 3 questions that I want you to consider. If you have a little piece of paper or something to write or take a note on, whether it's your phone or your computer, and you can feel free to share in the chat if you would like. I want you to reflect upon and answer these 3 questions. The first question is, what was something new that I learned today? So again, what was something new that I learned today? The second question is, how can I apply one thing that I learned today in my local lay organization? So again, how can I apply one thing that I learned today in my local lay organization? And then the third question is, what is one thing that I will share with my lay members of my local lay organization? So again, the third question is, what is one thing that I will go back and share with the members of my local lay organization? So we'll give you some time to think through those questions. We'll give you about 2 minutes to just think through those questions, jot down some answers. If you want to share with us in the chat, please feel free to share with us in the chat. And so we'll give you a couple of minutes to reflect upon those questions, and I'll put them in the chat as well. And while you all are thinking and writing, I do want to thank my district president, President Matthew Douglas, for all his support and us executing this institute, for Sister Shanae Saunders, who is our tech guru, who keeps us on schedule and keeps all the glitches from happening and helps us make sure that everything is done in decency, order, and excellence. Also to my conference doulas, who are also very supportive and have been supportive in helping us craft things, think through the direction of the training and what we want to do in the district, but also getting the word out and the communication out, as well as all of our conference lay organization presidents. We thank you too for your dedication and making sure the word got out about the Institute. Okay, so it's been about 2 minutes. Feel free to continue thinking about these things for today. But I hope that you were able to learn something today, but it's most important that we don't just keep information to ourselves, that we go out and we apply the information, we share the information, and that you can go out and tell people that they need to be here for the next institute, for the lay master classes that we have coming up, because we really want to make sure that we are prepared to 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 operate in our churches and make sure our churches are operating to the highest level of excellence that they can, to bring glory and honor to God's name. And I'll just read a couple of the responses in the chat. The process of becoming a trustee was something someone learned. I learned the extensive preparation helpful for a successful church training and presentations. We thank God for that. Praise God for this outstanding institute, and may He continue to bless ministries of our leaderships and presenters. Yes, I second that. And then someone shared to strengthen the church at large, to strengthen members to productively identify the elephants in the room. So that's really great. So again, keep thinking through these things and make sure that you do go back and apply and share. And I thank you all for your support, and keep your eye out for things to come. And I turn it back over to President Douglas.
Again, as Dr. Commodore, our Director of Lay Activities, has acknowledged, thank you for your participation, your engagement on today. I want to thank all of our presenters, Chair Jerry Turner of the CLEDC, who is also the president of the 4th Episcopal District and who has been with us the whole time today. We thank him for his presentation. Judge Dr. Derek Anderson from the 3rd Episcopal District for his presentation on today, and Director of Lay Activities, Michael Cousins from the 4th Episcopal District. We thank them for allowing their gifts to be used for our benefit. We thank Dr. Commodore. We thank, as she has stated, our tech guru, Sister Shanae Saunders, who is always on task and helps us to maintain consistency. I want to thank Sister Janice Murray for the elevation in the production of our communications. For those of you who receive our communications, they are next level, and she is always forward thinking. So we thank her for her work as well. As I'm talking, Sister Shanae will put up our save the date. We do have our time and location for our component meeting at the Bishop's District Midwinter meeting. It will be Thursday, February the 8th at 5:30 in room auditorium 4 on the 3rd floor in the Sheraton Hotel. I'm not exactly sure where this room is, but here's the information. And if you remember, our registration has been raised from $5 to $10. So this will be sent out to your conference presidents for them to disseminate to their respective conferences and the membership of those conferences. So again, our component meeting will be February the 8th, which is Thursday at 5:30 in the auditorium 4, 3rd level room in the Sheraton Hotel in Greensboro, North Carolina. We thank you again for your participation, and we will give you some of your time back on today. Sister Shanae, if you would close us out with the lay benediction video, I would appreciate it. And everyone have a safe day and have some fun today. Thank you.
May God bless us with the true spirit of Christianity, that we may live together, not as man over man, but as lay persons working with God, but as lay persons working with God, but as lay persons working with God. Amen.